You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
Welcome back to our continuing series of interviews from the Options Industry Conference 2024, this year coming at you from scenic, and I'm told not so sunny, but I guess we'll see when I get out of this room a little bit later today how that's going. Asheville, North Carolina. Of course, we're bringing you all the great content from the conference this week. So not only the panel, so if you missed any of the sessions or you just couldn't come down to the conference, as always, that stuff will be available on our network after the show, but also a series of conversations with a variety of people from throughout the world of options and indeed beyond to pick their brain on some of the hot button issues that are all the talk of the conference and indeed the options world. And next up into the hot seat, we have our old friend, Mr. JJ Kinahan, now the CEO of IG Group North America. JJ, welcome back to the network, sir. It has been too long.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Always a pleasure to be on with you. I think we've been doing these for a lot of years from a lot of different locations.
A lot of different locations, a lot of different business cards, all sorts of fun. You and I just chatted a few months ago on that panel. That was certainly a fun time back in a little bit chillier Chicago. I think that was the one week of the year when it was, minus 15 or what everyone thinks it is for the winter. That was a rough week to have to come into. I felt bad for some of your co-panelists. You were local at least, but I had other people fly into that maelstrom, so that was on me, I suppose, but a fun time nonetheless. But yeah, we're having a fun time down here at the conference as well, JJ. And before the conference started, we polled our audience. We said, hey, we're going to go down to the conference, talk about all the big issues in the world of options. If you had to choose, what would you like us to talk about? And they came back overwhelmingly with two issues that were top of mind for our options-savvy audience. So I'll let you play along, a little bit of a game we're playing. What do you think? Take a guess. What do you think those two issues were?
Zero DT.
It's like you've done this before.
Yeah, number one. Number two will be... This one's a little harder because now I have a few things I can choose from. I will say 24-hour trading.
Wow. It's like you've done this before, JJ. I just pulled up the numbers right now because this poll is still running. When it first went live, it was 75%. It was overwhelmingly zero DTE. In the last day or two, it seems like 24-hour stock trading slipping in there. Now it's 43.8% for zero day and 37.5% for 24-hour stock trading. So I think we'll start there, JJ. Obviously, it's hard to believe it's been exactly 2 years in a couple of weeks. I think it was April 18th of 2022. It's probably the last time you and I maybe sat down in one of these conferences in the last couple of years was when these things launched. I, at the time, didn't really pay much attention. It seemed like they were just completing the calendar. I don't think anyone did. I don't think anyone, if you go back and listen to all of our shows we did from OIC 2022, I don't think anyone said, you know what, this is going to revolutionize the game. This is going to be the thing that changes everything. 2 years from now, 50% of SPX flow will be in this. No one thought that. So it is kind of fascinating to look back at that from that perspective alone. But here we are, 2 years later. You and I chatted about this on the panel, but for a lot of our broad listeners didn't have a chance to hear that. I'm curious. Let's start there. You've been around the options game for a bit. these are still very contentious products. So where do you fall on the whole 0-day debate? Yay or nay, sir?
Well, first of all, I said 0-day only because that seems to be what everyone's using. I
know short-term
options.
They all have said it to me.
And the reason being they are listed for over a week. So I do think that that's actually 100% true. Where do I fall into it? I think that they're a fine product. Now, I think that the products they're in work really well right now. SPX because it's cash settled, and the ETFs because no one stock can overwhelm the index, so to speak. Certainly not in theory, and even in reality, we don't see that. But for single-day names, there's some work that has to be done. But I think where they're at right now is fantastic. And again, the numbers speak for themselves. As you just said, 2 years ago, who'd have thought we'd be thinking about almost 50% of SPX trading being in these shorter-term options? So there's clearly a demand for them, and people seem to be managing them properly. Just like everything else, they have risk. It's a little bit different risk profile. In fact, I was just listening to our pal Henry Schwartz talking in the conference today, and talking about the fact that many of the market-making firms actually have separate teams managing their shorter-term options as compared to the rest of their portfolio, which I found really interesting.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've been in here, so I missed Henry. He'll be looping through on our shows on Thursday, so I'll get a chance to catch up. That's a nice thing. I have my own little mini conference going here, JJ. But it sounds like, from what you're putting down there, that A, you're not reticent about 0-day, and B, you're not reticent about them expanding into single names at some point.
At some point. Right now is not the right time, Mark, because we still have to figure out exercise and assignment, and more importantly, do not exercise. Because, as intelligent as most retail traders are and your audience may be, that's still a very foreign concept for most people. And my fear is that we would have a big move such as we experienced in Meta earlier this week, or late last week. I'm sorry, all the days are running together in my head. You have a stock move really big after the close. And that's where the average retail client has a disadvantage because, let's face it, many listeners, after the market's done, they may go watch the 4:30 Eastern time version of Jeopardy. And whereas the market-making firms, as they should, have teams of people watching all the movement, when to exercise, what not to exercise, et cetera. That's not truly a level playing field. And one of the things I think we've done well as an industry is really even the playing field. So we have to find a way to do that with exercise and assignments also.
What are you hearing behind the scenes in terms of when do you think we'll actually see, let's say, Nvidia, Tesla, all the names everybody's asking for, Apple?
I think it's going to be a while, and I'm on an industry committee where we're trying to figure it out, and it includes all the exchanges and FINRA and the SEC because it's a really important issue, and I would rather we all came together to find a solution than somebody just going, rogue, and all of a sudden it's listed somewhere and everybody's got to figure it out in a second. And again, I give credit to my competitors and the folks I do business with every day, the exchanges, et cetera. Everyone really wants to make this work in a way where the retail client in the end doesn't get hurt.
And in your opinion, I've heard a lot of reasons why this can't get done. Is it the contra exercise, like you pointed out? Do we need to roll out cash-settled Nvidia first? Is that the procedure?
It would be interesting to roll out cash-settled products, but now you have a whole different, for those who don't know, and I'm sure your listeners probably do, but for those who may be new, the Options Clearing Corporation clears every exchange-traded options contract. They're the central clearinghouse. The system works really, really well. But there would be a lot of technical work on their side in order to get cash-settled options and individual equities. And they're in the middle of a big rollout, improving their system anyway, so that puts you back in time. And then there's the client experience for firms like ours on our TastyTrade platform, where clients are looking and were they trading the cash settled or were they trading the equity settled? So you have that possible confusion also.
Yeah, I don't envy those emails we're going to get on social media posts. Wait a minute, I sold my put in NVIDIA. Why don't I get the stock or vice versa? I'll just pass those along to you, JJ.
I appreciate it.
You can handle all the cash
settled.
settled.
If there are clients, I'm happy to do them, buddy.
All the cash settled questions. Well, the other hot topic, as I mentioned at the top of the show, that our audience is obsessed with, and it's funny, I was mentioning this earlier. I used to ask this question about, the after hours, the extended hours trading all the time at this conference. And I stopped about 4 or 5 years ago because it seemed like there was no movement on it and no interest in changing it. So I thought, why am I beating a dead horse? Let's just forget about the after hours options thing and move on. Fast forward to this week. It's all the rage again. NYSE kicking it off, SEC debating it on the stock side first. Obviously, that has ramifications for the options world as well. We also polled our audience on this, and you'd think our very option-savvy, hardcore trading audience, they want it all, right? They want gimme, gimme, gimme. But actually, no, they were reticent. We said, do you think stocks should trade 24 hours a day? Almost 70%, 69.8% said no. 30.2% yes. So I like our audience. They look beyond the forest for the trees in some of these questions out. They think about them, which is kind of fun. But I'm curious, where do you fall on that first, JJ? Do you think it's inevitable? Are we going to go 24/7? And do you think we should?
Well, when I was back at TD Ameritrade and Thinkorswim, we rolled out, if you remember, ETF 24-hour trading. It's got to be 6-7 years ago now. If you remember, we had Lionel Richie in a Super Bowl commercial singing all night long. By the way, he's a wonderful gentleman. Got an opportunity.
I forgot that's what that commercial was for. I remember you in the commercial. I forgot it was for that. That's right.
Lionel was, he couldn't have been a nicer guy. But that all said, so for the ETFs, it made sense, right? The reason it made sense for the ETFs is every one that we rolled out related to a future, which is already trading 24/7. So the markets were actually really tight, 2 and 3 cents wide. All night long, that's pretty amazing. Some firms have rolled it out on the individual equity names. I wouldn't say it's been a great success. I wouldn't say it's terrible. I wouldn't say it's been a great success. It's kind of somewhere in between. I think the market's still a little immature. Until, talking to some of the market maker firms, they're not in favor of doing options yet, only because you need more liquidity in the stock so that they can lay off their risk. Just like as many of your listeners understand, market making firms want to take away as much delta risk as they possibly can. They don't want movement to kill them. And when there's not a deep enough stock market, there's nowhere for them to go and hedge that risk. So I think until we get more individual, and that's why it makes sense, right, that the regulators are saying equity side first, then options. Once you get volume in the equities, which is decent, where people feel like they're getting good fills at all times of the day, then in my opinion, you start to talk about the options.
Along those lines, on the options front, obviously, if stocks do start trading in a more frequent fashion, that will impact the options. I'm hearing a lot of different theories about what that will look like on the options front, whether it's a limited pilot, okay, only the top 20 most liquid names, or only during earnings season, or maybe not during earnings season because that's when it's most dangerous. So I'm hearing a lot of interesting and conflicting things. What are your thoughts? When or if this eventually does come to pass in options, what format will it take, you think?
I think it will, and again, this is just me speaking with absolutely zero knowledge on this, just my own opinions, if you will. I think it will be a pilot program, which makes the most sense on the most liquid equities because they tend to have the most liquid options. Back to it's easy to hedge. So I think that that's where we'll start, and once you go from there, then they can prove themselves. And it makes sense to me to go with those because you're not going to have success if you have John Deere on the list. Nothing against the John Deere company, but it's the first one I can think of that, has just so-so volume and not a lot of options volume. Compare that to the names you just mentioned, the Nvidias, the Teslas, the Apples. All day, every day, great options volume, great equity volume, so you can have a product that's a success. And again, my biggest concern, having been on the retail side for so long, is the retail client, whether it's at my firm or any firm, is the retail client getting treated fairly? And in my opinion, that'll be the best way to do so.
When you and I did that panel a few months back, one of the big topics was this options growth tsunami. Can it continue? It's been nearly exponential for coming on 4 years now. I mean, you guys obviously see it on the retail side over at IG. We see it anecdotally in the explosion of listeners we've had on the network, seemingly month after month. We talked about it on the panel. We had some interesting conversations. coming into now a few months later, we saw the numbers coming back for March, and it was one of our first down months in a while, down about 10%. Now, obviously, comparing back to March of 2023, not exactly apples to oranges, because that was, of course, the contagion fair month. But still, it was a down month. So I'm curious for you, what kind of volume trends are you seeing over there at Tasty and IG? And also, do you think as an overall industry, maybe is the growth spurt finally maybe plateauing a little bit, or maybe just the pause before the next leg up there, JJ?
I think it's more the latter. We've been fortunate. We continue to see our volume growing. We're in a bit of a growth mode. We're a smaller firm that has to continue to grow, and we've had some opportunities to do so, and we've taken advantage of them. With that said, Mark, I think what you're going to see is maybe a little bit of a pause before the storm. What I would say is also, to me, this is like the employment numbers. You don't let one number say, oh my God, that's the new trend. So to your point, it's the first down number in a long time. So let's see what the trend is. We had earnings starting this month, which did lead to some pretty good days overall. Now, yesterday was a bit slower. I haven't seen the final numbers today, but my sense is today was a bit slower. Why? We have the Fed tomorrow. And so with that, I would expect that after 1 p.m. or 1:15 p.m. Central tomorrow, we start to trade back up again. But today you did have McDonald's, you did have Coca-Cola, so you had a couple of stocks that people have some, they're not a top options traded name, but there's some interest there. And you started to see some volume because of those two overall. So again, I'm not super concerned, to be honest with you, that, oh my God, this is a terrible time. I do think, like any good business, things can be a bit cyclical. So if it's just a month or two where we're taking a little bit of a break, that's fine.
Obviously, you're CEO of IG Group. You have a lot of different irons in the fire, including some crypto overlay. One of the questions, we had a lot of write-ins from our audience. It wasn't part of our poll, but people wrote it in anyways. What's the deal? What's going on? To quote Seinfeld there, what's the deal with options on Bitcoin ETFs? That's a question a lot of them have. Of course, when we did that panel, it was right after the ETFs had been approved, so crypto derivatives was a main focus of the panel. Fast forward now, here we are 3 months later, and nothing. Radio silence on when they could trade the options. Obviously, it's a regulatory issue. We sit on a lot of committees, and also you hear a lot of scuttlebutt behind the scenes. What are you hearing in terms of progress on this, or maybe lack of progress on this front?
Well, I would say it's a pretty far out of the money call at the moment, Mark. Let's put it that way. In other words, the probabilities are not high of it in the short term. To your point, it's a regulatory issue that seems to be, in some sort of gray zone. I don't know if it's a political struggle between two agencies, whatever it may be, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of hunger from the regulators to approve options. And many would say, well, we want to do it to protect people. I actually have an opposite view, as you talk about all day on this show. One of the great things about options, probably the greatest thing, is you can actually limit your risk in a much better fashion, particularly if you're going to be trading something like crypto as an underlying, by defining your risk through a spread or whatever it may be. And so it really It always puzzles me when people say, oh my God, options have such risk. And my feedback is always, well, please learn how to trade options in a way that you can define your risk. And I hope every listener right now is defining their risk when they trade options. It's what makes them a great product, in my opinion, for retail traders.
It is kind of mind-boggling to me that they would approve the underlying, but buying a put on said underlying to hedge, no, that is a step too far. That is verboten. We are still antiquated in many ways how they view these products out here. Well, we touched on a lot of the hot button issues that are top of mind for a lot of our listeners, but you're down here at the conference. I know people want to come here. They want to see people. They want to network. But what are some other issues you're hoping to hear about and talk about down here at the conference this week?
Well, I think, one of the things, if I'm being selfish on what we're doing at Tasty, is we're expanding into the UK. So you'll see early this summer that we will take our TastyTrade, we'll call it Tasty at IG, again, IG being our parent company based in London. And so we have an incredible distribution network, an incredible company there with, 19 different countries. And so we will take Tasty and the North American, the U.S., particularly stocks, options, futures, to other areas of the world, starting with the UK. We're really excited about it. We're going to be there. As you know, Mark, we do a lot of education, and so we're going to be there June 8th doing a live event in London. Anyone's welcome to come. We have almost 1,000 people already registered, and we're just excited to do a day of education and help people understand how to use the products better. So, one of the things I love about this conference, as you well know, there are people from all over the world that are in the options industry to come here. So you get to meet some of the regulators from different countries, some of the different firms doing business there, and start to develop some relationships there also.
Yeah, you're not the first person to come in here and say international growth is exploding for them on the options front. It's becoming a key focus for them. So yeah, definitely a trend we're seeing. You're right. This is predominantly a U.S.-listed options conference, but you're right. People come from all over the world now to attend this conference. We're seeing it, of course, anecdotally in our international numbers as well. So you're right. It is fun to see the growth of the product beyond these shores. Well, JJ, I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy day down here at the conference to educate our listeners and give them your thoughts on some of these hot button issues out there. And I think folks know where to go to find your fund by now, but hit them up again for one more time if they want to go learn more about all the fun options goodness you have cooking over there at Tasty. Where should they go? What should they do?
Sure, TastyTrade.com or TastyLive.com. Our two sites for content and for brokerage. Mark, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be on the Options Insider, and great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too. We've had some of your Tasty folks on the network of late, and they've certainly done a great job. So we'll have to make sure to rotate them back on soon and rotate you back on soon so we can get some more insight in some of these hot button issues facing the world of options, JJ.
Thank you, Mark. Have a great day, buddy.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.